what a week I'm having!
Hi, I'm Felix.
And I'm Cindy.
In 2019, we sold everything and moved into our RV full-time.
Since then, we've traveled the country following my nursing contracts.
We are the Roaming Gomes.
Gomes.
Hey, roamers, and welcome back to the channel. For those of you new around here, I'm Felix.
And I'm Cindy.
And we are the Roaming Gomes. What a week.
Yep.
I mean, I want to say up front, there's a lot of channels out there, the bigger channels especially, that they film their videos months, weeks, some in advance sometimes. And I think a large part of that is because they don't want anybody to know where they are. We film ours probably at most a week in advance. And we really don't care if you know where we are.
It's not like we have paparazzi coming around behind us anyway.
Yeah, that's a fact. So, and this is why we didn't have a video last week, because we went through probably the worst week of our RV life career.
Yeah, especially worst travel day.
Oh, yeah. It was culminated in that travel day. So, the story here is, this all started back around, March 28th, 27th? When Cindy woke up with a budding infection in her tooth. She was a little swollen out on the one side, right there, and in a lot of pain.
I had a filling that fell out a month ago, I guess. And there was some erosion to the tooth, and apparently it was much worse than I thought it was. So,
yeah, and it started to manifest itself into almost a abscess. So she needed to go to, and again,
a place I hate worse than anywhere.
Yeah, the dentist. And again, before we go any further into the story, I want everybody to understand that although it was horrific for us, we were also very much blessed by the universe because we got through all of this. Cindy was able to find a dentist that got her in
that day.
Mm-hmm. They did their examination and determined everything that needed to be done, and part of it was to have an extraction of that basically abscessed tooth.
And that was on Thursday. They did a cleaning and gave me a whole lot of information about what was going on in my mouth. Lots of pictures and stuff. And then on Friday, I went back because of my terrible dentist anxiety. They gave me some Valium, which I was very thankful for, and took that before the appointment and was able to get through the extraction without any problems. All of the people there at Houghton Family Dentistry are awesome. If you're in Tucson, especially the southern part of Tucson, which is where we were staying, they are wonderful, wonderful people.
The problem here was, this was on the 29th that she had the extraction. Our plan was to leave Tucson to come here to Cottonwood, which, by the way, this is Dead Horse Ranch State Park, which is right near our RV park in Cottonwood, Arizona. And as I was saying, this was the 29th that she was basically put down.
Speaking of dead horses. Wow.
Well, she was put out of commission. She was not allowed to lift anything. She really was supposed to stay essentially in a rest position.
Yeah. For at least 24 hours or so.
Right. Which I was smack dab in the middle of breaking down everything and getting ready to move. So I was on my own. Didn't do too bad until I read the weather report and realized that the 30th, 31st, and 1st, we were going to have some horrible weather. The 31st, which is the day we were supposed to move, there were 30 to 40 mile an hour winds with 60 mile an hour wind gusts, literally throughout the entire day, with intermittent rain. So, for all intents and purposes, that space in Tucson is our home, so we didn't have to leave.
No, we weren't in any kind of time crunch because my job doesn't start till 15th. So.
And I called up the RV park owner here, Tony, who is not just one of the best and nicest RV park owners I've ever met. He is probably amongst the nicest human beings we've ever met. I told him, Tony, we're not going to be able to make it on the 31st, and the 1st isn't looking very good either. We were supposed to take occupancy on the 31st, but the 2nd, Tuesday, is looking pretty good. It looks like it's going to be a nice day. He was like, fine, Felix, no problem. And just as a side note, he actually ended up giving us a small discount on the space for the month because we didn't occupy it until the 2nd. Because of the weather, I really wasn't able to do very much outside in terms of getting the rig ready to go. I did get a lot of it done, but then on Tuesday, Cindy was doing the inside, and I was finishing up the outside. And one of the things I do is that I check the tire pressures on the trailer. Cindy already had the entire inside done. The slides were in, the stairs were up. We were basically ready to hitch up and go. I got to the 4th tire on the trailer using our new tire inflator. And that actually has on it, which by the way, it's an awesome inflator and it'll be available. There'll be a link to it in the description below. It has a live gauge as to what the tire pressure is. I get to the 4th tire, and I inflate it to its 80 pounds of pressure, which is what it's supposed to be. And I look down, I'm about to reach down and unhook it from the tire, and I see that the live pressure gauge is dropping like a rock. The tire had a leak. So, no big deal. We had a discount tire, about a mile down the road?
Yeah, maybe a mile.
And we were going to pull out, hook up, pull out, and go to Discount Tire instead of going directly here.
Felix had called ahead of time before we left, and they said they could work us in. They didn't really have, I guess, an appointment, but they could work us in as far as getting another tire. And of course, they recommended we get 2 tires because you don't want uneven wear on your tires on your trailer. So we ended up getting 2 tires replaced on the back. There's 4 tires on the rig, and the back 2 tires are the ones that we had replaced. It didn't take very long, but we had to wait about an hour and a half before they could get to us. So we had originally left the house about 10:30, and ended up leaving Discount Tire about 12:30. Now, keep in mind, this is a 3.5-4 hour drive from Tucson to Cottonwood, where we are now. So we're already 2.5 hours into the day, the travel day, that we would have almost already been here, we thought.
Right.
But we left Discount Tire about 12:30.
And then we hit the road. I-10, it's a simple route. And again, this should have been the easiest travel day we've ever had. But we got on I-10. It's I-10 to I-17, right into Cottonwood. 4 hours. And we hit I-17 in Phoenix. That's where I-10 and I-17 split. And when I tell you it was one of the worst traffic jams I've ever been in.
And he's from New York.
Yeah, I was born and raised in New York. I lived in the Bronx, the home of the Cross Bronx Expressway, which leads to the George Washington Bridge, and has some of the... It has in the past been voted the most dangerous highway in America. And this was as bad or worse than any of the traffic jams I've seen there. This compared unfavorably to I-95 going through Washington, D.C.
Our Google Maps had given us a warning out a little ways before we got to Phoenix that said there was a 9-minute slowdown up ahead.
What she actually meant was there was a 9-mile slowdown ahead.
It was horrible. They had construction going on, plus lots of traffic feeding into where we were going to get onto 17.
We ended up stuck in that traffic jam for a little over an hour and a half. So what was initially going to be a 3.5 to 4.5 hour ride turned into a 6.5, 7 hour debacle.
Oh, and we're not done yet.
Oh, and we haven't gotten to the best part. We arrive at the RV park. Now, I said earlier, Tony, the RV park owner, is one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. He is, unequivocally. However, he did not necessarily give us the correct way to come into the RV park.
The directions he gave us brought us into the back side of the RV park. It's actually on Main Street, which is a 4-lane highway with a middle turn lane.
I need to tell you, this is a very small RV park. It's nice, but it is tiny. And the road that goes through the RV park, it's a single road, and the spots are all off that road, is not very wide. So you don't have a lot of space to turn and back into a spot. Coming in from the backside, there was no angle.
It just wasn't going to work.
To get into that spot. So I came to that realization, and I said to Cindy, I'm going to take the rig, go out onto Main Street, go up a ways, find some place to turn around, come back in the front entrance, and then I'll be able to go and back into the spot. So I started to do that.
And I started screaming, stop, 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 stop.
She was waving her hands and yelling, no, 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 no.
The driveway going out, the road going out onto Main Street has quite a steep grade going up. And he had his bike and bike's rack on the back of the RV. And the reason I was screaming and saying stop was the tire of the bike was on the ground, and it was going to tear the bike, the rack, everything off the back of the rig. But he stopped just in time, so.
Yeah. So I get out, and I take the bike rack and the bike off. Cindy takes them, and she goes to put them in some bushes, and I pull out. And my bumper just touched the ground on the way out. No big deal, it's dirt, it just moved the dirt, and we went out. I made a left, went down a ways, and saw what I thought was a parking lot that had an entrance, I could just go through and come out the exit.
It's a little strip mall type place.
It's going to be a piece of cake. You come out the other side, just turn right, left on Main, go back, pull in. Well, I immediately proved to the world that I do not learn my damn lesson. The very, very, very first RV park that we ever went to when we went on the road back in 2019 was in Georgia. It's called Country Boys RV Park. Why I remember that, God only knows. But it's called Country Boys RV Park, and a decent little RV park. It was muddy because they had had a lot of rain, and they were still having rain when we got there. But we got there after dark, and their signage left a lot to be desired.
We drove right by it.
We went right by the entrance. So I made the first turn down a side street that I came to. And it turned out that was a little tiny cul-de-sac. And even with the old rig, the much smaller rig, it took us about a half hour
to turn it around. Yeah.
To turn the rig around in that cul-de-sac, because the entire cul-de-sac was lined with ditches.
Oh, yeah.
All the way around. So Cindy and I were out there in the middle of the rain and chilliness. It's October.
And it was starting to get dark.
And it was pretty much dark. And we're trying to turn this rig around. Half hour later, we get it turned around, and we went back into the park, and no problem after that. So going back to me now pulling into this parking lot, I had thought I learned the lesson back then in Georgia that you don't pull into some place unless you can see clearly that you have an exit. I did not have an exit.
Oh, yeah, I had an exit. But...
Oh, yeah, I had an exit, but it was not conducive to a 36-foot trailer with a, 20-foot truck attached to it. You're looking at it right now. This is where I needed to turn to get back out of this parking lot. And it was pretty much my only option, because backing up, there was a taekwondo class right there. And
obviously very popular.
Yes, because I think every kid in Cottonwood was in that taekwondo class. And this parking lot was full of vehicles. I probably had 5 vehicles blocked in with the trailer. And I couldn't get out.
There was a right turn
that went behind the stores.
And then he had to do another left turn that was just very limited in radius, turn radius.
Yes, very sharp and very narrow. And like I said, you're looking at it, or you were looking at it, but I call her and tell her I'm stuck. I tried twice to actually get out of that exit, and the first time I went in, I hit this guy's fence, which alerted him to come over. And when he came over, he explained to me anyway that he had to repair that fence innumerable times because of people just like me. He repeated that to you, didn't he?
He said 12 times. I've had to fix this fence 12 times.
So here I am stuck. Cindy is on the way. She gets there, and you saw that there was really...
It looked on the face of it that there was enough room, but it was close. It was very close. So I'm standing there trying to
Taekwondo class. And he said, "You stuck, huh?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I can't see a way out of here." I said, "I mean, I could try to back out the way I came in, but that's going to be pretty dangerous."
I would have had to stop traffic. I would have had to stand. I've thought about it. I would have to stop traffic in the road for you to back out onto that highway. On the main street.
Onto Main Street, yeah. Well, he looks at the situation and he said, "You know, I'm really good at this. I have a 44-foot fifth wheel, and I'm pretty sure I could get you out of here." I was like, "Okay. If you want to, truck's running, keys are in it. Have at it." I was almost to the point of frustration at that point where I was like, "Hey, okay, I don't care if he gets in and pulls away and leaves."
You could kind of tell from his demeanor he wasn't going to. So.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, we actually saw him with his kid go into the taekwondo class, and his wife, I think. So he, I made it clear to him that if he damaged the thing, I really didn't care. He was doing me a solid, and well, I'm here to tell you, this man got in my truck, backed the thing up a little bit, got really tight to that right wall, and pulled this thing out.
He had that much room.
And that's no exaggeration. He had about 2 inches. He did have to hop the curb on the left, on the driver's side, but
on that fence side where the guy was watching still.
Oh yeah, that guy stood there the entire time we were doing this.
I think he was going to make us pay for his fence, but
yeah,
this guy drove the truck by the fence by it was very slim.
2 inches. Exactly. No exaggeration, 2 inches.
But that's all we needed.
And he got it to a position where I could just pull out, got out of the truck, came over, I thanked him, I wanted to hug him. It was as though somebody had sent an angel. And he went back inside to watch his kid do taekwondo, and I pulled out and got back to the RV park. Pulling into the spot was a little bit challenging.
Because then it was getting dark.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yes, it was near complete darkness at that point, and I backed it in. I don't have any problems really driving my truck and trailer, except for not paying attention to my own lessons. But I backed it in. We got it in the spot. Couldn't quite get it level completely. To my liking anyway. Cindy was like, "Yeah, it's fine."
At that point, I didn't care.
And got it, got the water and the sewer hooked up and called it a day. However, before we called it a day, I came to find out, Cindy had injured her leg.
I really didn't notice it that much when we were setting up and I was directing him back into the... I was just focused on let's get it in the spot and let's get set up and go to bed. We were exhausted. Keep in mind we had left Tucson, our place in Tucson, at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was now 7 o'clock at night.
Cindy, because of... She's got arthritis in her knee. On any normal day or work week, she's walking around and it's fine. It's fine for her to do whatever she needs to do until she gets home and she relaxes in the recliner, and then it starts to stiffen up a little bit.
Yeah, first thing in the morning it's a little stiff. Anytime I sit for any little amount of time, it gets stiff, so I try to keep it moving as much as I can.
So we ended up with what kind of came out as the perfect storm. She had to be in a rest position for the tooth. So that was 2 or 3 days before the move. Then she sat in that car
For way too long.
for 7 hours, essentially.
Yeah, we stopped a couple of times, but
Yeah. And that was just to use the bathroom and get back on our road. And she apparently either strained or sprained or twisted something in the back of her leg. And she could not walk.
it was very, very, very painful to put any weight on it at all. And I couldn't bend it to a 90-degree angle. I couldn't, and having just worked on an orthopedic floor, I'm panicking, thinking that I need to have a knee replacement like yesterday, and it was very, very painful. I took some ibuprofen, I took Tylenol, I take Celebrex every day anyway for arthritis, and for a couple of days there, it was very iffy about how this was going to turn out. And was I going to be able to go to work?
Well, you actually called the orthopedic doctor that's going to be at the hospital you're going to be working at to get an appointment. They never did call back, did they?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. So now Cindy was down for the count, and I was having to.
I wasn't down for the count. This makes it sound like I was just. I was not as mobile as usual, but I was trying to be, and I knew that I needed to move it or it was going to get worse.
And quite honestly, to not undersell it, you could the next day you couldn't get down the stairs to go outside.
Yeah, it was hard. Yeah.
She was in a lot of pain, and I know Cindy, and for her to be giving in to pain is a rare thing. She called the doctor. They never called back. And then it was kind of, you know how all of this stuff happens and you're making it through, and then some little thing happens, and that's just the thing that pushes you over the edge. For me, that was trying to figure out how to set up my sewer hose.
It's something that you've done 1,000 times.
1,000,000 times. Because the connection to the sewer is just slightly uphill from the rig. And that was my point at which it just flashed through my head. It was not a long, involved thought, but it came through my head. We're going to stop doing this and just settle here, and she can get a staff job at the hospital, and that'll be it.
I had a moment the night before when we were getting the rig set up and slides out and all that stuff that I was exhausted. I was just so exhausted from the whole day of stuff getting longer and longer and traffic and everything. I had a thought walking around the back of the rig, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth it.
Yeah, so you could see where our heads were at. But then I pulled myself together. I did a little research, and why people are not talking about this more is beyond me. But these RV sewer hose stands are like a gift from God. I can't call it anything else. They're perfect. They are absolutely perfect. And again, there'll be a link to them in the description below. Worked out great. Then I was able to get the rig leveled to my satisfaction, and I recalibrated our auto level, which we'll find out if that works at some time in the future, because that auto level has really never worked.
Once we got through all of our trials and tribulations, my knee's better. My knee's back to baseline now. It's fine. And I just needed a balance of rest and movement to recover from that. We love this place. We love Cottonwood. It's
oh my gosh,
gorgeous town. we'll be doing some more videos on things around here. This state park, which is like 4 minutes from the RV park, it's beautiful. Lots of they have RV camping, tent camping, cabins. It's just a very beautiful park. Several lagoons that have walking trails around them, and
which one of them is right behind us.
And the town itself, the people are so friendly, and if everybody I work with at the hospital is as nice as everybody we've run into, it's going to be a great contract.
Not any of you mean travelers.
Yeah, bullies. But at any rate, it's all worked out.
And Cottonwood is just incredible. It really is. It is gorgeous.
And in some spots, there's one of the birds.
Oh boy.
It wants to be on the video.
Yeah.
In some spots, we can actually see Sedona. We can see the red rocks of Sedona from Cottonwood in some areas. So that's how close we are to Sedona, only we don't have the touristy stuff that's in Sedona. So the traffic is not that bad here. Jerome, we went up to Jerome. We'll show you some video of that later. And it's just been a very pleasant stay so far.
And very conducive to recovery for us.
We almost needed to go to a sanatorium or something. A mental health facility.
For full-time RVers.
But we made it through, and we're very glad to be here and look forward to learning more about the area.
And this RV park we're staying in, Stony Brook Mobile Home and RV Park, is exactly what we described in this video right here. So go take a look at that one, and you'll see that this is the perfect RV park for us.